and it was the 396. There were about 200 of those built. The 442 in 65 went to a 400 cubic inch motor, as did the Buick and the Oldsmobile. But they spent a year catching up with GTO and the Pontiac division.
Just to talk about what we had mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you mentioned, indeed, GTO became a separate make in 1966, which was surprising to me because I thought by 65 they had already done that, but apparently not. So, if you're listening and you have a GTO, what do you think about it? And
call us and give it to us for free. Thank you.
I'm not sure that's
we're all going to take turns joyriding that car.
Funny, I just got whiplash. I don't know where that actually went from there.
Call us in at 800-809-0802 and talk about your GTO or your GTO experiences. And I've got a friend that we chatted a little bit before the show about his GTO experiences. He had a Judge, which was a special edition GTO. Here come the Judge. And he had that in college and sold that during the gas crunch. Got himself a red, white, and blue 1976 special edition Nova.
Okay.
6-cylinder. We've never let him live that down.
Does he still have it?
No, he doesn't.
And he's trying to sell it at Barrett Jackson.
He's trying to sell it at Barrett Jackson for GTO pricing.
He was thrilled with $2,000.
I kind of shamed him into at our 40th. Well, we're close in age, and at his 40th birthday, I said, "Ain't you the guy that owned that GTO that used to straight race and this?" He went out and bought a GTO convertible, and he has it now.
Oh, wonderful.
As a matter of fact, he's got two. He's got a late model, one of the Australian GTO coupes, and he's got his 1969 convertible, 4-speed 400.
I'm curious if you're listening or watching this and you actually have one of the Australian GTOs.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, when you bought it, did you feel that you had a classic GTO, like a modern version of a classic GTO? Because I've kind of heard it go both ways as far as people buying it and saying, "Oh, this is just makes me feel like I'm driving a newer version of a '68 or something like that," versus people who just bought it and say, "Hey, it's a cool car."
I drove one when they first came out, and it was a whole different experience. First off, it stopped. It turned.
Yeah.
The air conditioning worked. The radio worked. It got gas mileage.
Not fun.
You could pass a gas station.
Not fun.
Now
GTO is gas, tires, and octane.
There you go. Yeah, you change it. I like it. All right. Well, the
goes
ladder,
back in the family is what you're saying.
That's what it is. Yeah. The ladder GTO, an Australian-built car, same chassis used on the Camaro, the CTS Cadillac, and it was an excellent chassis. General Motors from the U.S. had to go to Australia to get that, and they brought the cars up and rebadged them GTOs here. It was the Holden Monaro in Australia.
What could the General Motors have done to the Monaro when they brought it over here to make it sell better? Is it a cosmetic thing? Should they have put a few more Pontiac-looking shell on it or something like that? Or should they have done something different on the original frame and that type of situation?
400 cubic inch engine.
Oh, it had an LS.
I was going to say, it had an LS. That wasn't half bad.
It had some horsepower. But I think when they first brought the Monaro up as a GTO, they missed certain styling cues. And it's because of the age of the people at General Motors. They didn't remember what they were trying to emulate. There was no hood tack. There were no hood scoops. And there was no dual exhaust.
I don't want it. That's the end of that.
Well, it only took them a year to figure that out. And the following year, the second year of the GTO in the U.S., they did that. Now, on that same chassis, the whiz kids at General Motors, this is, again, an age group issue, didn't know the heritage of what they were talking about. And they were going to bring back the pickup truck version, the Ute in Australia, and try and sell it as an El Camino through Pontiac dealers. They weren't even going to give it to Chevrolet.
Wow, that's just mixing.
Well, and they could have capitalized on that chassis by selling it as a Chevelle as well with different grille and bumpers. Badge engineering, just like they did in the 70s. In a lot of cases, some of the body parts were interchangeable between GTOs, Oldsmobiles, and Chevrolets. But they didn't. They didn't understand the heritage.
I do think had they gone cosmetically a completely different direction, that could have changed that GTO totally.
I think so too, and I think they really missed out on that opportunity. And who knows where Pontiac would be right now? And I brought this up with John Craman at the Dr. George show. Is let's be real here. Which would you rather see still exist, the Pontiac or the Buick? We know why the Buick's here.
Yeah.
And that's because of China, and that's the fact that it's so popular there. It's really integrated well in that culture. But if they kept Pontiac and decided to jettison Buick, would General Motors be in a better shape?
You know, we were talking about that with John because we were both interviewing him down at the Dr. George show, and hats off to the guys down there that the Palm Springs Cruising Association put on an excellent show this past weekend. Over 1,000 cars. They were estimating $60,000 to $70,000 for the Dr. George Cancer Foundation, which was great. But we talked to John about that, and his opinion is the same as ours. Dump the Buick. Pontiac was on a growth spurt at that point in time because they had the GTO, the G8 sedan based on the same chassis, just the longer wheelbase.
Even the Solstice. I mean, it was
Solstice.
getting better
which
reviews.
was cool.
Saturn had the Sky that came soon after that, and that was an up-and-coming vehicle.
Up-and-coming vehicle, a direct competitor for the Miata at the same price range with more horsepower and more luxurious feel. But they dumped Pontiac. And I think it's the heritage aspect that the people in charge of General Motors right now don't have the automotive heritage or history knowledge to know why things succeeded and didn't succeed and where they were. Oldsmobile, they dumped early on. That was the oldest marquee in the General Motors portfolio. Pontiac had come along after as a upgrade of Oakland, and it stuck, and it was one of the leading sellers. When you wanted high performance and you wanted a little bit of upscale car, you went to Pontiac. You wanted more upscale, you went to Oldsmobile or Buick. And I think one of the problems we had in the States with Buick is when they did have high-performance cars, a 70-year-old does not go in to buy it. And when you have a 20 or 30-year-old coming into a Buick or Oldsmobile dealer, the salespeople didn't know what to do with them.
Right.
So that went away, right, Anna?
I'm still stuck on GTO.
Hey!
I'm stuck on GTO,
you know
and
what?
GTO is stuck on me.
When I was
That was
17 and I was going to Hollywood High,
Should we know about this?
yes, my friend Jay had a 1967 Mustang GT350,
Okay.
and he wanted to sell it to me for $3,000 because it had a manifold leak and he didn't have the money to fix it.
Oh, no.
And I went home and I said, Mom, I need to buy another Mustang. And she said, no, honey, we don't have any room for it. And it just went bye-bye.
Oh.
You didn't
So-
bring up the manifold leak? That didn't help sell it?
No.
You could have retired.
No,
now.
it was on a 4-speed and everything, fold-down rear seat. It was white with the blue stripes.
Blue stripe.
And I'm still in love with the cars that I grew up in high school with. And I think that's a big draw for people at the auctions with the muscle cars.
And we talked to John
They
about
grew
that,
up with
too.
them and they love them and still want them.
The baby boomers are not buying, they're selling.
Right.
The people that are buying are younger. They want to buy the cars they remembered when they were growing up, and those are the muscle cars and newer. So the hot rods, the Model A's, the 32s, they're not necessarily decreasing in value in some cases, but they're not increasing in value. And there's kind of a fire sale on those. We saw the muscle car era. Those cars were going for big dollars. Whereas you bring up a 29 Ford Hot Rod, which would sell for $30,000, $40,000 a few years ago, and 20 is squeaking it out right now.
But doesn't the pricing always go in cycles, though?
It does, but in this case, it's the baby boomers getting out of the market. They're retired.
They want Ferraris now.
No.
They're downsizing.
Yeah, I think they're downsizing a little bit. I mean, you've got people who, and we've talked about this before, where you've got guys who have 15 to 20 cars.
Yeah.
They want to knock out about 5 to 10 of them, keep the ones they like, and those are the cars that are in your 50s or 40s. You're around that era.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news is for some of us who remember the 50s and 60s, and to some extent even the 70s, those cars can theoretically be had for a better price than before because there's a bunch out there.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, and that's what's happening, and the market has become more reasonable for those cars. Mm-hmm. The problem is the buyers of those cars are fewer, and they're collectors.
Yeah,
and these cars are getting stashed away. And like I said, when Randy was talking to people out in the hallways there at Barrett-Jackson, we came across guys with, I got a 100,000 square foot garage, and I got 90 cars in there, and
wow.
I think I'm going to add an addition on there, and we met a couple that they race.
But are they doing that for investment or because they truly love the car?
They want them. They have the money. They're going to buy them.
And you never want to buy a car really as an investment.
No.
Unless it's something that's going to really go up. Because most of the cars, let's face it, most of these really cool cars that we see on the streets that we really like is your first car. Is your girlfriend's car, is your uncle's car that he had, and he had two of them, and you want everything that your parents had, or something along those lines, because that's where your memories are.
Yeah, and that's where they were going.
And that's where people get them. And that's the best way, because you can get them at a decent price, and you don't overspend on them. Some do, but for the most part, you don't have to.
Well, and for if you're really trying to strip it down, a lot of times people maybe want to drive a collector car, and there's a certain age at which a collector car isn't really a viable piece of transportation on, the super highways of today.
Right.
Just about every car I own is not a viable, except for on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'll tell you what, with some of the cars we have to have shares in Standard Oil.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And that stuff that you pour on your garage floor to clean what's that stuff? Garage cleaner, oil,
grease sweep or whatever,
degreaser or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, my car's a controlled leak.
But it still wins awards.
No, but Peg's does.
Okay.
That's
Not
right.
mine.
Do you allow her to park in the garage? I mean, is she parking in the garage?
She's in the garage, yes. We have her car at the house in the garage right alongside her everyday car. My everyday car goes outside. Of course, her everyday car, and, we talk about collector cars and dropping value. Corvettes right now are soft. The market on a C4, C5 is really soft. The solid axle cars are not escalating unless they're resto mods, and that's what we saw at Barrett-Jackson. The resto mods were going 100, 150,000, whereas the equivalent stock or restored was half that price.
That is interesting, and you're talking a resto mod that's got modern drivetrain and stuff, so it's more comfortable to drive.
You've got a 1962 Corvette with a C4, an 84 or later suspension. You can buy the whole suspension or the whole C4 for $3,000-$4,000. But you put that suspension on a tube chassis underneath a 62 Corvette, you now have a $120,000 to $150,000 car.
How about that?
You get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, but going back to what I was saying, my wife's got a Corvette, and we got it really inexpensively because, for example, she sold her Ford Focus for enough to pay for the Corvette.
Wow.
But her Corvette's a convertible. Now, what most people know from the news, we're getting quite a bit of rain here. So I had to clean the garage out because she told me either install the soap dish or towel rack or open the garage up so I can get my car in there.
That's a great story, Bob.
Yeah.
Hey, Randy, why don't you tell us what's next on Talking About Cars?
Why don't you do
well,
that?
thank you very much. Coming up.
Segway.
Come win a hat.
Coming up, as I notice we're running a little bit of time.
Oh, that's right.
We are coming up on Talking About Cars Thursday morning, 4:30 in the morning Pacific. 7:30 Eastern Time, and don't ask me what it is in Saudi Arabia, but we will have Talking About Cars. Bogie Latiner joining us from All Girls Garage, and basically the vehicle she had, a 1957 Chevy pickup with a BMW engine called the Montage.
Gorgeous machine.
They unveiled the new car that they're going to be working on. The truck was worked on by 90 women.
Yeah.
Wow. And they're hoping to get as many for the next vehicle. It's on, go check it out on radio.com, KNX1070.com, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, all the usual places you watch or listen to podcasts. So check that out. That's coming up next on Talking About Cars.
All right, Anna, what's on your agenda for this weekend?
GTOs.
GTOs. No, you can catch Anna at Peterson Automotive Museum.
We have a 440 Oldsmobile in the vault.
Do you?
Yeah,
A
some
440
beds. Yeah,
Oldsmobile,
come
huh?
to the Peterson and
Come to
have
the
a car
Peterson.
party with me.
You can do that.
Okay.
Nice.
I know I'm going to at the end of this month.
I'll be there.
You're going to be there. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to GAAS, the Great American Auto Scene. We'll see you next time. Please tell your friends, like us on Facebook, like me on Facebook, Bob Beck, and GAAS, Great American Auto Scene, also talking about cars, and visit us whenever you can. Remember, talking about cars with